The title of today's message is When Your Plans Are Devastated. And before we get into the actual scripture, I would just want to just throw out a couple of different things to you. Have you ever been in a situation where your plans were completely devastated? And when you have those in your mind and in your heart, plans that you want to do, things that you have ready to go, sometimes we've imagined these things all out. We've sat down, we've planned them out. We have, paper, pencil. We have these great plans for ourselves, or maybe our family or whatever. It could be a trip. It could be personal goals. It can be whatever it might be. And then as we go and as we start moving along and trying to walk in those plans, something happens. And not that it just changes, not that there's a road bump, not that there's a detour, but that they're devastated, right? That they're just completely devastated. And it's like, oh my gosh, why did I even start going down this path? Well, that's kind of what we are going to talk about today. That's what happens to this woman that Elisha has blessed with this child. And so we're going to continue talking continue looking at Second Kings chapter 4. Let me go ahead and get there and bring that up here. And there we go. So let's go ahead and read. We're looking at 2 Kings chapter 4, verses 17 to 37. And so just to recap just a little bit, I'm going to read verse 17, which we read last week. It says, "Now the woman conceived and gave birth to a son at that season the next year, as Elisha had told her." All right, so when the child was grown, the day came that he went out to his father to the reapers. And he said to his reapers, he said to his father, "My head, my head." And his father said to his servant, "Carry him to his mother." When he had carried him and brought him to his mother, he sat on her lap until noon, and then he died. And she went up and laid him on the bed of the man of God, and shut the door behind him and left. Then she called to her husband and said, "Please send me one of the servants and one of the donkeys, so that I may run to the man of God and return." But he said, "Why are you going to him today? It is neither new moon nor Sabbath." So she just said, "It will be fine." Then she saddled the donkey and said to her servant, "Drive the donkey and go on. Do not slow down the pace for me unless I tell you." So she went on and came to the man of God at Mount Carmel. When the man of God saw her at a distance, he said to Gehazi his servant, "Behold, that person there is the Shunammite. Please run now to meet her and say to her, 'Is it going well for you? Is it going well for your husband? Is it going well for the child?' Then she answered, 'It is going well.' But she came to the man of God at the hill and took hold of his feet. And Gehazi came up to push her away, but the man of God said, 'Leave her alone, for her soul is troubled within her, and the Lord has concealed it from me and has not informed me.' Then she said, 'Did I ask for a son from my Lord? Did I not say, do not give me false hope?' Then he said to Gehazi, 'Get ready and take my staff in your hand and go. If you meet anyone, do not greet him. And if anyone greets you, do not reply to him. And lay my staff on the boy's face.' The mother of the boy said, 'As surely as the Lord lives and you yourself live, I will not leave you.' So he got up and followed her. Then Gehazi went on ahead of them and laid the staff on the boy's face, but there was no sound or response. So he returned to meet him and informed him, saying, 'The boy was not awakened.' When Elisha entered the house, behold, the boy was dead, laid on his bed. So he entered and shut the door behind them both, and he prayed to the Lord. Then he got up on the bed and lay on the child and put his mouth on his mouth, his eyes on his eyes, his hands on his hands. And he bent down on him, and the flesh of the child became warm. Then he returned and walked in the house back and forth once, and went up and bent down on him, and the boy sneezed 7 times. Then the boy opened his eyes. And he called Gehazi and said, 'Call the Shunammite.' So he called her, and when she came to him, he said, 'Pick up your son.' Then she came in and fell at his feet and bowed down to the ground, and she picked up her son and left." All right, so remember, let's just recap just for a second, just in case you weren't hanging with me when we were talking last week. In case you missed that one, which you shouldn't have missed it, you should go back and watch that one. But The Shunammite woman was just, she's a well-to-do woman. She saw Elisha and Gehazi coming one day to her village or town, and she said, "Hey, why don't you come and I'll feed you and take care of you, and you can come stay with me." And throughout that time, she realized, what, this guy's really a man of God, and so she tells her husband, "Let's make him a room upstairs." So they make him a room, a guest room. So whenever Elisha shows up to this town, he would go and stay up there. Now, she was very kind. She did this out of the kindness of her heart. She didn't ask for anything in return. And at some point, Elisha, like we said already, Elisha said, "Hey, what can we do for you?" So Elisha was like, "Can I talk to the king for you? Can I talk to the captain of the guard for you?" And she's like, "No, I'm good." And that's when Gehazi, gave that suggestion. She's her husband's older and she doesn't have a son. And that's when she says, "Hey, look, you're going to have a child by this time next year." And the woman says, "Hey, look, don't play games with me. Don't give me false hopes." But Elisha said, "No, this time next year, you're going to have a child." So she does. She has this kid, right? And so we don't know how old he is here in 2 Kings chapter 4, starting in verse 18. We don't know how old he is, but he's out there with his father and with the other servants, and they're reaping the harvest. They're bringing it in. And as he's out there, he suffers some kind of issue where his head is hurting. So who knows what that might be, what kind of medical condition that is. But it was strong enough that wasn't just a little headache. The father says, "Take him to his mother." So the servant takes him to the mom. The mom grabs him and she has him on the lap. And the mom, with the motherly instincts, realizes something is really bad here. And so she's probably comforting him. She's probably going through all that. But at noon, he dies. So here's the thing, right? There's a lot of stuff that goes on here in this story. And really, there's a lot of good stuff about the Lord and how faithful God is and the faith of the Shunammite woman and all of that, right? You could probably, a preacher could probably get, a month's worth of lessons off of this, these 20 verses right here. But I want to focus on one little piece because we read all the piece about how she goes to her husband, she asks for a servant and a donkey, and she tells him, "Hey, it's going to be fine. Everything's going to be fine." Goes out there. She tells the servant, Gehazi runs up to her, like, "No, everything's good." Then she finally gets to Elisha and she falls down and grabs, his feet. And that's when she kind of breaks down at that point. And so we know, we just read the rest of the story. Elisha goes and the boy comes back to life. Now, like I said, there's a lot of good stuff here. We can focus on a lot of this story, but I just want to focus on one little piece right here. I want to focus on one aspect of this and kind of go from here. So when the father sees the son having, this headache, and he calls to the servant and he says, "Take him to his mother." The mother takes the child, takes him in her arms, in her lap, and is there with him. Now, we don't know how long. It could have been a couple of hours. It could have been really early in the morning. I mean, if you're out there, back in the day, in those days, and you went out as soon as daylight hit, you went out there and, in the cool of the morning to try to bring in the harvest and all of that kind of stuff. So it could have been really early in the morning. She could have had him on her lap for 4 hours, maybe, a couple of hours, 4 hours, who knows. But in that time, there could have been a lot of things that happened. She could have been thinking, "Man, my child is not acting like himself. There's something really, really wrong. I hope it doesn't get bad. It looks like he's suffering. He has a headache. Maybe he was crying. Maybe he was whining." And you know how parents are, how moms are. They're like, "Man, I hate to see my child suffering like that. I want to take that pain away from them," right? So she could have been thinking that. She could have been thinking, "Oh, what do I do here? What do I need to do here? I hope this isn't bad. I hope he recovers, She could have been thinking, God, why do why is he so sick? Why is it so bad? Tell me, God, I didn't want this. I didn't want a child. I told Elisha I didn't want a child. And here I have a child for a couple of years and now he's just really, really sick. And come on, God, that's not fair. That's not the way things could have been. I mean, she could have been going through all those things, all those thoughts in her mind. Just like when we get devastated and when things happen in our lives that are just so messed up, we're looking for some kind of answer. We're looking for some kind of understanding. And sometimes we do get mad at God. And like, here's this child that she had always wanted. She finally gets him. And, she's like, what is going on here? So she could have very easily been mad at God. She could have been very easily just gone off the rails. It's like when things go sideways, what's going to happen here? But she didn't do that. See, I think just looking at this one little moment here in this verse, I really do believe that in that time that she had her child in her arms, that she was making a plan. She was making a plan for the plan of her life that was just now devastated. Her plan in life was, I have this child. He's gonna grow up. I'm gonna get to see him to become a man. He's gonna get married. I'm gonna have grandchildren. I'm gonna have all of that kind of stuff. And she saw her plans slipping away, her plans going sideways right here because her young child was dying right here. So I tend to believe that she was making up plans of, hey, what am I going to do? How am I going to respond? If my child dies, what's going to happen? And the reason I say that is because her reaction when the child dies. So at noon, when the child dies, I mean, what does she do? She's sitting there and she's, the child dies. And so she immediately takes the child and goes to the man of God's room, lays him down on the bed, and goes to her husband. She doesn't freak out. She doesn't start screaming, God, why? She doesn't start doing any of that. She doesn't, call for her husband and like, oh my gosh, what is going on? And she doesn't call for doctors or anything like that, right? She's not screaming, like pulling out her hair. She very calmly goes and she tells her husband, send me a servant with a donkey. She tells the servant, hey, I want you to go to the man of God, and I want you to go as fast as you can, and don't stop unless I tell you to. Gehazi comes up to her and she's like, hey, everything is good. But then she gets to the man of God, and that's when she loses it right then and there. See, I believe that in that time when she was holding her child and her child was breathing his last and was about to die, that her plan was, I've got to get to God. I've got to get to the man of God. Now, back in those days, we find it very easy to, especially in churches, like, you can pray, you can close your eyes no matter where you are, in church, in your home, at work, driving in your car, walking, in the park. You can close your eyes and you can talk to God at any time. Back then in those days, that wasn't the case. You just didn't have that direct communication with God. But this woman was setting up and saying, I got to get to God. I've got to get him. My plan is to get to the man of God, because that's where I'm going to find my answers. That's where I'm going to find my help. So when we get to these times in our lives where our plans are just devastated, and whatever they might be, you might have plans for your future. You have financial plans that seem to be getting devastated. You might have relationship goals right now and plans that got devastated. You might be looking at a relationship right now and you're like, how in the world is this relationship so broken? I never planned for this, and you feel so devastated there. You could be in the same situation as this woman was, There's so many reasons why. I mean, you can be devastated about the political circumstances. You can be devastated about how things are crazy in America right now, and how things are so divisive. That could be really bothering you and hurting you. So the thing is, how do we react when our plans are devastated? We do what the woman of God did, or this woman did. We go to the man of God. We go to the man of God, and that's got to be our reaction all the time, not just when our plans are devastated. In fact, if you're only going to God when your plans are devastated, then you probably really aren't going to God at all, because a lot of the times that's like our last resort. And when we are in that state of panic and devastation, we're not really thinking clearly. You see, this woman was thinking clearly. She knew what she was doing. She put the kid up in the room so no one would see him, up in the guest room. She went to go call her husband. She got a servant and a donkey. She told the servant, hey, drive as fast as you can. You know, when Gehazi came up, she was like, no, we're good. And until she got to Elisha, to the man of God. See, we need to have a plan in our life when things are being devastated, when things are crazy, when our plans are not what we thought they were going to be in our lives and in the days that we are in right now. We need to have a plan to go to God. That needs to be the plan. And the reason you can't wait only until you're devastated is because we don't think straight when we're devastated. See, it's got to be this thing that we do on a regular basis. It's got to be almost, and I don't want to say muscle memory to the point where it's automatic, but it has to be almost automatic, being that you are so comfortable going to God all the time that is what you do. So I want to share a couple of things here, a couple of thoughts before I close out. A couple of things hopefully would encourage you. So and here's the first thing, is God your go-to? Like this woman, is God your go-to? Is God the first thing? Is crying out to Jesus the first thing that comes into your thought process, that comes into your heart when you are devastated, when you are coming into a situation and you're like, I don't like this, I don't know what it is, I don't like the way it feels, I don't like anything about it. God, I need your help. That's got to be your go-to. God has got to be your go-to. Going to Jesus has to be your go-to. And you do that, again, by having that strong relationship with the Lord on a regular basis. You don't do it when times are tough because, again, it's not that natural just flow. Like this woman, it was natural. She had time to think, like, what is going to happen here? I have my next steps. My next steps are, if my child dies, he's going up into the guest bedroom, and I'm going to go to the man of God. You see, that has to be the thing that we do when we feel devastated. And we do that when we're not devastated. We do that when things are good. We do that when things are just fine. We have that strong relationship with the Lord. So when things do get rocky, when the storms of life do come, when things happen that we were not planning for our lives, wherever we are right now, then it's just automatic for us to say, God, I need your help. You turn to God. God has to be your go-to every single time. It's got to be automatic. It's got to be automatic, and it's automatic because you do it on a consistent basis. Second thing I want to share with you is this. Have you considered the times when God has already come through for you before? You know, sometimes we don't really think about those things, right? We don't really think about the times that God has come through for us. And it's not something that we hold up here and we hold in our hearts. You see, the thing is that this woman realized that one of her biggest joys in life was to be a mother. And the only reason that happened was because of God, was because of Elisha, the man of God that was in her life at that time. And so there are times in our lives where things happen and God is working behind the scenes. God's working in the front of the scenes. God's working all around, and he's doing great things in our lives. And sometimes when we are in this mode where life is devastated and we are, freaking all out, we forget about all the times where God was there. We forget about all the times where God came through for us. We forget about all the times where God was answering our prayers. And so, I want you to think about those times where God has come through for you, especially if you're in a time right now, in a time of devastation for whatever reason it might be. You're able to reach back there and say, "Man, God, you were here, you were here, you were here, and here, and here, and here, and I can see you all over the place." Sometimes we do need to have a place that, we can open up a book and a list and get a list of all those things, like a journal. We're in the Thanksgiving season right now, and I see people all over the place doing gratitude tweets and gratitude posts and different things like that. 25 reasons or 25 days of gratitude and blah, 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 and all that kind of stuff. What if we wrote down in a notebook, in a book, all the times where we could remember where God came through for us? More than likely you're going to be thinking about the big things that God came through, maybe big healings, maybe times where people got saved and times when you were in trouble and then God came through. But there's a lot of little things that happen in your life that sometimes you don't even realize God was there. There's a lot of things that happen in your life that God was moving, and you, just because they were small and because they weren't the really big things in life that just, put out, sirens here, you probably forgot about them. But having a place where you can go and jot things down and being able to go look at those things, go look at those lists, are very helpful and very beneficial to us when we're in those times of devastation, when we're in those times of worry and anxiety. We can go back and say, "Man, wait, God did this, and God did this, and God did this." I'm sure that's what the woman was doing when she was holding her child and his life was kind of slipping away from him. She was remembering, God gave me this life. It just out of nowhere, it just happened. But God can give this child life again. So remember those times when God has come through for you. And lastly, learn to trust him. I know that's really easy to say and all of that, but again, it comes from the experience that God has been there all that time for you, being able to look at that. Faith is one of those things where it's faith. It goes out there. You put it out there. There's really not a lot where you can kind of hang your hat on, right? You can there's not a lot where you can touch and feel and all that kind of stuff. But trust comes from the experience and comes from knowing that he has come through on a regular basis, there over and over and over again. Trust is something that it's almost, and I know it's kind of this idea here, but it's almost kind of tangible. When there's relationship issues and people say, "Well, you broke my trust," and you realize there was a time where things were good and things were happening, and then someone did something and broke that trust. And it's almost like a ripping apart, right? It's like now you've got to restore that trust. You got to bring it back together. The thing is that God never breaks trust with you. And so we should never break trust with him. And as we begin to experience God over and over in our lives, and we begin to experience his goodness, and we begin to experience that he just comes through and he's always there and he answers prayer and he truly loves you. When you begin to realize that builds that trust in him, and you begin to trust him for all the things, it just grows and grows and grows. It gets to the point like this Shunammite woman where it's like, I know I could go anywhere else. I could go try to find a doctor. I can go, to the king. I could go, call my husband. I could just pull my hair out. I can do all these things. But no, I'm going to trust in God. I'm going to go find the man of God. And so when we have those experiences, we get to that place where we God is our go-to. And we're able to look back and we have that experience, that history where God has come through over and over and over again. We build that trust in God to continue to go back to him over and over again. So even if you're just starting out, there is something that you can grab onto to trust in the Lord. And those of us who've been following the Lord for a while, there's a lot there. There's probably more that you forgot that you can remember. And that should just steal your heart. When I say steal, I mean like steel, like hard, like not like a hardness of heart, like God can't get through to me, but a stealing of it as far as, man, yeah, I'm unmovable, man. That should put you like in a, that unmovable, standing firm. Like, yeah, I can trust God. God is going to come through for me. There's a great scripture. I mean, most everybody has heard it, and I just want to share it really quick. Proverbs 3, verses 5-6. Trust in the Lord with all your heart, and don't lean on your own understanding. In all your ways acknowledge him, and he will make your paths straight. That's what the Shunammite woman did. She trusted in the Lord with her heart, and she didn't go to her understanding, man. Her understanding would have been, my child is dead. Oh my gosh, I'm mad at you, God, and all of that kind of stuff. And that's not what happened. She trusted in the Lord, and she made that straight path right to the man of God. And that's the way that we should respond. That's the way that we should, come to the Lord when we are in those times where our plans are devastated, when we are depressed, when we are not happy with where we are, where the country is, where we are, in our relationships, with finances, and our health, and all those different things like that. Like, God, you're in control. You're in control. So if you are listening to this and your plans have been devastated, you have a plan to move forward here. And if you are good right now, things are fine with you, then just know that this is the time where you build these things up as well, because there's going to be a time where things are not going to go well. And then we can always come back to the Lord and make a straight beeline to God. And he's always going to be there. He's always going to welcome you, and he is always going to have the answer for what you need. Amen.